Hi there. I'm Deborah Sherman-Luce with Technically, a news organization that serves a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. Today, ahead of our May 10th Developers Conference, we'll be reviewing Urban's new mobile authentication process with Andy and Bala from Urban Technology. We're releasing these series of technical talk videos in the lead up to the Technically Developers Conference, part of Philly Tech Week, presented by Comcast. Andy, passing it over to you. Excited to hear your expertise on the topic.
Thanks, Deborah. Hi, I'm Andy Rudy. I work as the senior manager for the web engineers here at Urban, representing sort of the front end UI display on the websites. And I'm joined here by Bala.
Hi, I'm Bala. I'm senior manager for the platform services at Urban Technology. We support the backend services for the e-commerce applications on Urban.
So today we're going to talk about one of our latest projects, which was mobile authentication. We will start with a little bit of a platform overview in terms of what we're working with here at Urban, both on the front end and the back end. And then Bala will jump into explaining the project itself a little bit more. So on the front end here at Urban for web, we use Vue.js as our main framework, using Vuex for state management. We do server-side rendering. We aren't using any sort of library for that right now. We're doing a proprietary version of server-side rendering. And we're backed with Node.js and Express framework that allows us to handle our web servers and our routing. The mobile platform here is native applications written in Swift, Kotlin, and Java for both iOS and Android.
As far as the backend goes, we are comprised of a set of RESTful microservices written in Python and Golang. We also have a set of event processors to do asynchronous events processing, and also we have some scheduled jobs. We also have a couple of business tools that the merchandisers use to publish catalog out and to do user account management. Next slide. So as far as this project goes, Urban wanted to use a easy to remember, mobile-friendly credential for use across our brand's store and online. And so that we decided to use mobile number as that credential. So with this project, we are saying that we'll require a mobile number when you register a new account, and then we don't require a password. We also then would require verification of that mobile number so that you can use that to sign in once the profiles are created. We will remove passwords from our accounts, and the customer will no longer have to use a password to log in. And next slide, please. So in Urban, we use JOT tokens to authorize your calls across APIs. So we have Tornado-based RESTful microservices in this application. We also use Python Celery for event processors. MongoDB and Google Firestore are our databases. We use PubSub in some cases, and AWS queues and topics. We have Cloud Functions and Cloud Run/serverless services. We are fully hosted on GCP at this time. As far as the existing or the previous login architecture, a user would come onto our site, and the front end would then call a couple of platform services APIs to log in the user. Here in this the previous flow, we had the customer enter their email and password. They'll call our service, and then we'll give back a token that the front end will then use to pass along as authorization in all the API calls. Next slide, please. In the newer flow, we will have the customer come in and enter their phone number, and we will generate a unique one-time passcode using a vendor called TeleSign, and then send it to their mobile device. We will check if the account exists, and we have a bunch of checks before we even call TeleSign. But then the user will receive the OTP on their device, at which point the user is presented with a screen to enter the OTP. We will then validate the OTP and then give back a token to the front end. The front end will take that the token and pass along to our API calls. So I have represented all of our backend services in a big circle of Urbn services, but it is comprised of 2 APIs in the backend, which basically goes to the database and does the validations, and then call the vendor to send the OTP and then also to validate the OTP. We also have a feature where we can remember your login for mobile applications. So we take an identifier to then allow you to keep that login longer. Next slide, please. So similarly with phones, we also allow you to log in with your email address and an OTP. In this case, the main difference is instead of using TeleSign, the vendor, to send the OTP, we are using our email client to send an email to their email address with an OTP, and then use that OTP in the next step to validate that you're successfully logged in. In this case, also you get a JWT token or JSON Web Token that the front-end clients would then pass around for all their API calls. Next slide. And I'll hand it back over to Andy to talk through the web changes for this project.
Thanks, Paulo. So yeah, I want to walk through some visuals and some of the methodology we use to make some UI updates for projects like this. So first off, just on the left here, we have our old create an account modal. It's simply requiring email and password, and then you can create your account. In the new flow, we're now hoping to gather mobile numbers as well. That's now a new required field. And as part of creating an account, you are asked to confirm that mobile number through your first interaction with a one-time password. In terms of signing in, previously we would just require email and password for signing in. Now we've broken email and password into 2 separate views, and we also use mobile number as a potential sign-in method. In this new state, there are plenty of people who don't have a password at all. So they'll need to use an OTP in order to access their site, in order to access our sites. These examples are showing the Anthropology website, but it's the same UI mechanisms and the same backend that's powering Anthropology, Urban Outfitters, and Free People in this scenario. Here's an example of what it looks like to receive some of our one-time passcodes, either through a text message on your phone or through email, in this case for Anthropology. Currently, I believe we default to email in a lot of these scenarios. In the future, we'll probably be shifting to prioritizing mobile number, which we think is more accessible for our users. So I want to talk a little bit about how we get to these flows, how we update our UI to account for these new pieces of data that we need to collect and these new situations and scenarios that we need to account for. So this is an example of a UI flow that was created by a combination of our designers and our business analysts. And we use this to help our development teams understand what they're developing against, what the business requirements are, and what different views might exist. Some of the key changes to support mobile authentication and one-time passcodes were breaking email and password into separate views so that we could handle them separately, whether we're accepting a password or accepting an OTP in any given case, adding a view for signing in with your mobile number instead of with your email and password, new form inputs for the OTP once you've received it and need to enter it, as well as inputs for mobile number, and all the new success and error states and transitions that go along with these new states. So at Urban, we use state machines in the UI in order to help us understand these complex data flows and UI flows and allow our templates to be a little simpler and more readable. So for anyone unfamiliar with state machines, it's a mathematical concept, but the general gist is that you have a various number of potential states and the different inputs and transitions that will allow your current application to be in each of those states. We'll do some examples as we go here. So this is an example of a relatively simple state machine that we use here at Urban. This is creating an account. So even with the addition of the OTP add-on here, it doesn't overly complicate things. But what you'll see in the circles is the various states that our UI display might be in, whether we're creating an account, which means that the main form would be displayed, whether there's an error state, which means we would be displaying errors, whether we are requesting the OTP, meaning we're waiting for verification from either an SMS or an email passcode, or whether we've successfully authenticated at that point. And you'll see represented a bunch of different submitting and erroring and success transitions between these states. On the left is what one of our state machines looks like inside the code. It's essentially a nested object with different states and different transitions and some state entry functions attached to them as well. This is a view of a more complex state machine that we have within our system, and it's extremely related in that this is the sign-in state machine, which is a little bit more complicated. Now that we have a bunch of different methods of signing in, because we're still supporting our old methods, which is email and password, and we're not forcing our users to update, although we are giving them that option. We have a bunch of different scenarios we need to account for. Another example that I'm showing here is some of our template code, where we are able to do a relatively simple else if within Vue's templating language based on a state within the state machine. So if we are currently in the show phone form state, our UI knows exactly how to update, and we don't need to do much of that business logic within the templates themselves. We can simply extend templates and allow them to do what they're best at, which is just displaying UI and not necessarily making decisions on which UI pieces that we should be displaying. So that's how we use state machines. And I'll pass it over back to Bala to talk about this project as a whole and some of the future considerations that we have moving forward.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. I just want to say that even though this is a big project, we had major changes in both the backend services and UI. There was a lot of great collaboration among our product folks, our BAs and engineers, including the devs and the QA people. So it was a project that made the whole team work together in a big way, and it was a major success. So I think from an engineering team's perspective, this is a big win for us. Some of the things that we are going to work on in the future or in the near future, I think, is as Andy briefly mentioned earlier, we are trying to make some UX changes so that when a user asks for an OTP, even though they supply an email, we would try to send it to their mobile devices, because most people are expecting OTPs to come to their mobile phone number instead of the email. So that's one of the changes. We also want to allow logins to be remembered longer if we can somehow identify where they're coming from. And then once we do that, we also want to allow users to then say, I want to log off this device versus that device. And then grand plans for our feature is to use this mobile number as an identifier across all our brands, like Free People, Anthropology, and Urban Outfitters. So more to come. We have some work in progress for some of these features, and our product and BA folks are working on some more changes down the pike. That's all for now. Andy, did you want to add anything more at this point?
Yeah, I guess one thing I'd want to add is that, Bala was mentioning that this project really was an effort across a lot of different disciplines, whether it's front-end web, front-end mobile, back-end services, operations. And we're always looking for bright people to come in and help our teams there. So, keep an eye out for Urban postings. We're certainly hiring. We've got a lot of good projects like this coming up, and we're happy to hopefully get some new people in to help us along the way. I think with that, we're all wrapped up, and we'll pass it on back to Deborah.
Thank you so much, you guys. That was incredible, and we really appreciate the insight. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you in person at PerPay on May 10th for the IRL portion of this event. Talk to you later.